When police discovered the burnt remains of an entire village in northeastern Nigeria, they found something that made even hardened investigators sick. 17 bodies. 12 of them children. All of them killed for one reason: they refused to renounce Christianity. But this massacre was just the beginning of a story the world refuses to tell. The numbers paint a horrifying picture. Nigeria has become the deadliest place on earth to be Christian. In 2025 alone, over 7,000 Christians were murdered. That's 35 people killed every single day. More Christians are killed in Nigeria than in the rest of the world combined. Since 2009, the violence has claimed over 50,000 lives and displaced 2.5 million people. To understand this genocide, we need to go back to 2009. That's when a radical Islamic militant group called Boko Haram emerged from Maiduguri in Borno State. Their name literally translates to "Western education is forbidden." From the beginning, their mission was clear: establish an Islamic caliphate and eliminate Christianity from northern Nigeria. What started as sporadic attacks quickly escalated into systematic terror. Boko Haram's reign of terror followed a chilling pattern of escalation. Each year brought new horrors as the group grew bolder and more brutal in their attacks. 2014, the night that changed everything. It was a Tuesday night in Chibok, a small town in Borno State. The government secondary school for girls had reopened so students could take their final exams. In a region where less than half of all girls attend primary school, these 276 students had defied every odd. They were there to build a better future. Around 11 p.m., trucks carrying Boko Haram militants surrounded the school. Armed with automatic weapons, they forced the terrified girls, aged 16 to 18, onto vehicles and drove toward the Sambisa forest, a lawless nature reserve the group had turned into their stronghold. Quote, the survivors' accounts are harrowing. One girl who escaped early described the terror of that night. Chibok survivor testimony. What happened next sparked the hashtag #BringBackOurGirls, an international campaign that reached the highest levels of global power. Even Michelle Obama, then First Lady of the United States, publicly supported the cause. Chibok, once an unknown remote town, suddenly represented Nigeria's most crucial failures: corruption, insecurity, and the invisibility of the poor. But as media attention faded, for 2 years after the abduction, there was nothing but rumors and nightmare scenarios. Forced marriages, enslavement, starvation, sexual violence. Then in May 2016, Amina Ali escaped from the forest with a baby, a child conceived in captivity. Her escape gave the world its first confirmed glimpse into the girl's suffering. 5 months later, the Nigerian government reportedly offered Boko Haram cash and prisoners in exchange for 21 girls. Then in 2017, another group of 82 girls were released in a second negotiation. But the cost was steep and controversial. The reality for survivors has been devastating. Many returned with children born from forced marriages to Boko Haram fighters. They face impossible choices and crushing stigma. The survivors who spoke to media outlets revealed devastating truths. Some were forced to watch executions. Others became mothers to children of their captors. One survivor named Hao had her leg amputated after being shot during an escape attempt. Another girl described being punished for refusing to convert to Islam. They were beaten, starved, and used as human shields during military airstrikes. Some died in childbirth. Others from snake bites or starvation in the forest. According to aid organizations, roughly 1/3 of the girls still missing are believed to have died in captivity. But the Chibok girls were just the beginning of a much larger crisis. Since the Chibok kidnapping, the violence has only intensified. Boko Haram was joined by another terrorist organization in 2016, the Islamic State West Africa Province, or ISWAP. Together, these groups have orchestrated a campaign of terror that specifically targets Christians. The scope is staggering and deliberately underreported. The pattern of attacks is systematic and brutal. Boko Haram and ISWAP don't just kill, they terrorize. They raid Christian villages in coordinated strikes designed to inflict maximum trauma and force entire communities to flee. The terrorist playbook: how Boko Haram attacks. Early morning raids on villages while people sleep. Burning homes, churches, and schools to the ground. Killing men who refuse to convert or join them. Kidnapping women and girls for forced marriages and sexual slavery. Stealing livestock, crops, and all resources. Planting explosives and using child suicide bombers. Targeting church gatherings and religious celebrations. Destroying food supplies to create starvation. In January 2025, Boko Haram escalated attacks on Christian communities in Chibok, yes, the same Chibok where the girls were kidnapped. In coordinated raids, they targeted the villages of Njala, Banzia, Shikaka, and Yamamog. They burned homes. They torched churches. They killed 5 people and displaced over 4,000 Christians. Eyewitnesses reported that militants specifically targeted Christians during these raids, intimidating them and demanding they confess. The terror is captured in the words of those who survived the latest attacks. Ibrahim Yona, farmer who fled Shikaka. In September 2025, Boko Haram launched another deadly assault, this time on Wagamongoro village in Adamawa State. Around midnight, heavily armed militants stormed the Christian community. They killed 4 Christians, David Micho, his son Daniel, Jude Jacob, and Omega Duda. They destroyed homes, shops, and the local church. They burned motorcycles and vehicles. Local vigilante groups tried to fight back but were quickly overpowered. The village had been attacked just 2 months earlier in July. After that first attack, residents had fled but eventually returned to rebuild. Now, they are fleeing again. Here's where this story gets even darker. The Nigerian government has been accused not just of failing to protect Christians, but in some cases, of being complicit in the violence. Security forces arrive too late, if they arrive at all. Military protection is non-existent in many Christian villages. And some local officials have been accused of turning a blind eye to the attacks. In 2024, the United States Commission on International Religious Freedom found that Nigeria's security forces have systematically failed to curb the violence. The international response has been equally disappointing. While some voices have spoken out, the crisis remains largely ignored by mainstream media and world leaders. President Trump previously designated Nigeria as a country of particular concern for religious freedom violations, a designation that was reversed under President Biden. Now, in 2025, members of the U.S. Congress are pushing to restore that designation and suspend arms sales to Nigeria until the government takes action to protect persecuted Christians. Congressional hearings have revealed shocking testimony from victims and human rights organizations documenting the scale of the crisis. Behind every statistic is a human being. A mother who will never see her daughter again. A father burying his son. A girl forced to become a woman in the darkest circumstances. A child who witnessed their parents' murder. These aren't just numbers on a UN report. They're real people with names, families, dreams. Quote, the words of one mother capture the anguish of thousands. Anonymous Chibok mother. Some of the Chibok survivors who returned are now studying at the American University of Nigeria in Yola. They receive psychological treatment and special education programs. But even there, the trauma haunts them. Some have been rejected by their own families for choosing to remain Muslim, a faith they adopted under threat of death. Others are stigmatized for the children they bore in captivity. One survivor told CNN that her daughter is bullied and called a child of Boko Haram. These women survived hell only to face a different kind of torture at home. 82 Chibok girls are still missing. Some are believed dead. Others remain in captivity after more than a decade. There's debate about whether to call this a genocide. Some argue it's ethnic conflict or resource competition disguised as religious war. They point out that Boko Haram has killed Muslims too. And it's true, the situation is complex. Other farmer conflicts, ethnic tensions, and political instability all play a role. But the targeting of Christians is undeniable. The systematic nature of the violence against churches, the forced conversions, the kidnapping of Christian girls specifically, this goes beyond random terrorism. Whether you call it genocide or not, one thing is clear, this is a massive humanitarian crisis that demands urgent attention. Let's be clear about what we know for certain. The numbers don't lie. Nigeria accounts for 90% of all Christians killed globally. More Christians die for their faith in Nigeria than everywhere else in the world combined. This isn't happening in a vacuum. This is happening right now, in 2025, while the world watches Netflix and scrolls through social media. So what can actually be done? Real solutions require international pressure, government accountability, and sustained attention to this crisis. What needs to happen now? Restore Nigeria's designation as a country of particular concern. Suspend arms sales until the government protects all citizens. Deploy UN peacekeepers to vulnerable Christian regions. Increase international media coverage of the crisis. Fund humanitarian aid for displaced communities. Investigate and prosecute Nigerian officials complicit in violence. Support organizations working to free captives. Pressure the Nigerian government to negotiate releases. The Chibok mothers still wait. Every day, they wake up not knowing if their daughters are alive or dead. Some wash their missing daughters' clothes every month as a ritual of hope. Others have given up after a decade of silence. Families of other victims live in constant fear, knowing another attack could come any night. This is not ancient history. This is not a third world problem we can ignore. This is a systematic campaign of terror happening right now against millions of people whose only crime was. Quote, despite everything, the faith of Nigerian Christians remains unshaken. Pastor Polycarp Zongo, survivor of church attack. This isn't just about one kidnapping or one village. This is about a pattern of violence that has claimed over 50,000 lives since 2009. It's about a crisis that's been ignored for too long by too many people in positions to actually help. The Chibok girls became a symbol, but they are not alone. Thousands of other girls have been kidnapped. Thousands of families have been destroyed. Entire communities have been erased from the map. If you were moved by this story, hit the like button. If you think the world needs to know, share this video. The algorithm won't promote stories like this, but you can. Remember their names. Remember their faces. Remember that these are real people who needed the world to care, and the world looked away. Rifkatu Galan. Monica Mark. Saratu Marcus. Naomi Zakaria. And 82 more Chibok girls still missing. Hundreds more from other schools. Thousands killed whose names we'll never know. Millions displaced with nowhere to call home. 35 Christians killed every day in Nigeria. Docket investigates the cases the world tries to forget. We cover the stories that matter, the victims who deserve justice, and the crimes that demand answers. If you want to see more cases like this, cases that need attention, cases that reveal uncomfortable truths, cases that could prevent future tragedies, subscribe now. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode. And let me know in the comments, what case should we investigate next? Justice delayed is justice denied. But silence is complicity. Don't be silent.